Welcome, dear listeners, to this inspiring episode of Speak English with Confidence, a podcast proudly presented by English is Easy. And before we dive into today's conversation, I want to remind you that confidence in speaking English is not something you're magically born with, but something you create through courage, practice, mistakes, and determination. And the more you expose yourself to real conversations, the more you train your mouth to produce the sounds of English, the more you allow yourself to try even when nervous, the more natural and powerful your communication will become. Because English, just like any other skill, grows only when it is used.
Thank you, David, and I want to begin by saying that as a learner myself, I have often felt nervous, afraid of being laughed at, or worried that people would not understand me. But over time I realized that most people are kind, most people appreciate the effort, and most people are far more impressed by the attempt than distracted by the mistakes. And that realization gave me a kind of courage that I did not have before, because I understood that confidence comes not from waiting until my English is perfect, but from daring to speak with the words and grammar I already know.
That is such an important point, Sarah. And I think every learner listening right now should pause and understand that even native speakers of English make mistakes every single day, whether it is a mispronounced word, a forgotten phrase, or a small grammar slip. And the difference is that native speakers keep talking, keep expressing, and do not allow those small errors to stop the flow. So as learners, we should adopt the same mindset and understand that fluency does not mean being error-free, but rather being able to continue speaking confidently no matter what happens.
And another thing I have noticed is that confidence grows when you practice in small steps every day, because reading just a short passage aloud each morning trains your mouth and ears to get used to English sounds. Learning a few new words every evening keeps your vocabulary fresh. And even recording your own voice once a week and listening back helps you notice your progress and areas for improvement. So little by little, English becomes less of a school subject and more of a living language that feels comfortable in your daily life.
You are absolutely right. And I would add that one of the greatest enemies of confidence is comparison, because so many learners look at someone who speaks faster, uses difficult expressions, or has a perfect accent, and they begin to feel discouraged. But the truth is that every learner has a different journey, a different background, and a different speed of progress. So the only fair comparison is with your own past self, asking not, why am I not like them, but how much better am I today than yesterday? Because that way you build motivation instead of destroying it.
I love that, David. And it makes me think about how often students believe that speaking fast is a sign of fluency. But in reality, what really shows confidence is the ability to slow down, to speak at a natural and comfortable pace, and to give yourself time to choose words carefully. Because when you do that, the listener actually understands you better, you feel calmer, and the conversation flows more smoothly. So in fact, slowing down is not a weakness, but a strength that shows control and confidence in communication.
Exactly, Sarah. And if we look at how professional speakers, teachers, or leaders communicate, they almost never rush their words, but instead focus on clarity, tone, and rhythm. Because true communication is not about speed, but about connection. And this is why learners should not pressure themselves to sound like a movie actor or a news anchor, but instead aim to speak clearly, calmly, and confidently, knowing that their unique accent and style of speech are perfectly acceptable in the global world of English today.
And that idea really changes everything, because once you stop trying to erase your accent or copy someone else's exact style, you begin to appreciate your own voice, your own rhythm, and your own way of expressing ideas. And that self-acceptance brings a new level of confidence, because English is no longer something that belongs only to native speakers, but something that belongs to all of us. A global language that welcomes many voices, many accents, and many identities, and that is such an empowering realization.
Yes, and it is also important to understand that confidence is not built in a single day, but rather through consistent practice and repeated exposure, which means you have to put yourself in situations where English is required, whether it is joining an online discussion, talking with friends, practicing with teachers, or even speaking to yourself in the mirror, because every attempt you make, no matter how small, adds another layer to your confidence. And over time, you will look back and realize how much stronger and braver you have become.
And if I may share from my own journey, David, I remember a time when I avoided conversations in English because I thought silence was safer than mistakes, but after months of forcing myself to speak, even in short sentences, I discovered that people listened, people responded, and people appreciated my effort. And suddenly my fear began to shrink. My words came more easily, and I felt proud of myself. So I learned that fear only disappears when you face it directly, again and again, until it loses its power over you.
That story is so powerful, Sarah, and it proves that the only way to overcome the fear of speaking is by speaking, because confidence is like a muscle that grows only with exercise, and the more you use English in real conversations, the stronger your ability to communicate becomes. So the lesson for all our listeners is simple. Do not wait for the perfect time, the perfect sentence, or the perfect word, because that day will never come. But start today with what you already know and watch how quickly your confidence grows.
And one of the things that helps me personally is listening to English podcasts like Speak English with Confidence from English is Easy, because by hearing real conversations, repeating them aloud, and shadowing the rhythm of the speakers, I feel more comfortable with natural expressions. My ears get used to the flow of English, and my own speaking becomes more confident, which shows that listening and speaking are partners in building fluency, and the more you practice both, the more powerful your English becomes.
That is an excellent point, and learners often underestimate how much listening contributes to speaking confidence, because when you listen carefully to real conversations, not only do you pick up new words and phrases, but you also absorb rhythm, pronunciation, and tone, which later come out naturally when you speak. So, in reality, listening and speaking are two sides of the same coin. And both are essential if you want to develop confidence that feels strong and unshakable.
And I think what we are really saying here is that confidence is not about being perfect, but about being brave, being consistent, and being willing to express yourself even when it feels uncomfortable. Because every word spoken is a step forward, every mistake is a lesson, and every conversation is an achievement. And if we look at English not as a test, but as a bridge, we will find that confidence grows much faster and fluency becomes something natural rather than something forced.
Exactly. And I want our listeners to imagine themselves 6 months from now if they practice every day, speak whenever they get the chance, listen to podcasts, read aloud, and stay consistent, because that future version of themselves will be far more fluent, far more confident, and far more comfortable in English. And the only difference between today and that future is the small daily actions they take, which means their future fluency is completely in their own hands.
That image is very motivating, David, because it reminds us that confidence is not something far away, but something we can build right now. And I hope every listener feels inspired to take action today, to practice without fear, to trust their progress, and to believe that English belongs to them, because the moment you believe it belongs to you, the moment you allow yourself to use it without hesitation, is the moment confidence becomes real.
And as we come close to finishing this episode, I want to leave one last powerful reminder, which is that your English does not have to be perfect for it to be valuable, because what truly matters is your ability to share your ideas, your stories, and your voice. And once you realize that your voice matters, your English matters, and your message matters, you will stop holding yourself back and start speaking with the confidence that has always been inside you waiting to grow.
Yes, and I would also like to thank everyone for joining us in this episode of Speak English with Confidence, brought to you by English is Easy, because we truly believe that every learner has the potential to speak powerfully and confidently, and we want you to remember that you are never alone on this journey, because we are here to support you, encourage you, and remind you that fluency is not a dream but a destination that you are already walking toward with every word you speak.
So with that, we say goodbye for now. We encourage you to keep practicing, to stay brave, to trust the process, and to remember that every time you open your mouth to speak in English, you're building confidence. You're moving closer to fluency, and you're proving to yourself that English truly is easy when you approach it with patience, positivity, and persistence. So until next time, keep speaking, keep learning, and keep believing in your own voice.
Thank you again, dear listeners, and on behalf of English is Easy, we wish you courage, success, and endless confidence in your English journey, and we look forward to being with you again in our next episode of Speak English with Confidence. where together we will continue to grow, to learn, and to celebrate the amazing progress that every learner is capable of achieving.